to the cloud. There we go.
Oh,
I don't know
thank
where to
you.
do it. I hope it's not to my device because you'll never get it.
That's all right. Okay, we'll figure that out later.
Okay.
Anyway, so good point, Wendy. Actually, it was discussed that funders often drive the type of insurance that you have to add. That was brought up. I can't remember if you were there yet or not, but I've also heard this from other villages that say that's what drives that conversation. I've also heard, I thought I heard Andy say something about events being covered. Did you guys hear that? And here's where I was asking, why I'm asking. Suppose you have an event that gets canceled because of COVID, a big event. Like, we don't do big galas anymore, but you know, say you owe a hotel a lot of money or a venue money. How do you, is that what he was referring to? Event coverage?
I think what he was talking about was bodily injury at an event,
Okay.
but not
Yeah, that's
cancellation of
probably right.
events.
That
But that
makes
would
more
have been a
sense.
good question. Yeah.
We had to do it with Mount Vernon at home. We had to provide a certificate of insurance at River Farm.
Okay.
Right.
So
It's Albany Guardian Society. A lot of the venues that we went to, we had to get special event coverage, even though we had general liability. We had to send the rider to them prior to the event.
Right.
And it's mostly to protect them. They're shifting the liability of any damage at the event to us. So we oftentimes went to a non-for-profit conference center. And it was a great, cost, but their policy was to shift the liability. So you might see churches or other non-for-profits doing that, where you have to get a special rider. It was about $100, I think, per event. So
yeah.
It's not cheap. So it's something to really consider when you're planning an event.
Amy is asking about a question about record keeping for supplemental auto coverage. That's a really good point. That's a really good point, because we elected not to get additional coverage because we could not meet the requirements that were needed. It required that we go back to our drivers and look at their driver's license annually, look at their policy annually, log all these different things that we weren't able to. It was the burden, the administrative burden was too high, and we opted not to go beyond the initial $1 million policy. But Amy, is that the same?
Well,
is your
we used
question
to,
different?
yeah, we, years ago, we were doing neighbor to neighbor where, we would just talk to each other and say, somebody needed a ride to the doctor, could you go? Then we started using village rides, which we have not restarted because of COVID. And that's when you would pay a fee, and then this organization, hold on a second, and this organization would do the background check and all of that. Okay. And we would have a record. We would say this person is going to drive on this certain day to whatever. We don't. So we did have that supplemental auto insurance coverage. We still do, but I don't know how we would use it right now without using village rides. So my question is, do we need to keep a schedule of who is driving who to make sure that we have a record that the driving is done by the volunteer, and we intend, if there is any bodily injury or whatever that goes beyond the driver's coverage, that our insurance would cover it? Or can we do it after the fact, after the accident happens, and say this person was driving as a volunteer?
I see. Your question is different.
Can I ask a quick question? So the difference between all volunteer, just a neighbor helping neighbor, my understanding as a former AD was that anything that was organized, whether you're an all volunteer or a staff person through the office, you're at risk. Versus if, you have a list of people and here are the members and here's the volunteers, and you can call the member or the volunteer directly. It's not organized. And so the liability doesn't fall on the organization. Is that right?
Yes, basically that's my understanding. So, and right now we're doing a lot of ad hoc driving, just out of the kindness of people's hearts. And we don't have anything that's formalized. There's no record keeping. And I'm thinking that we should get back to that kind of process. We're paying for the insurance, but I just wanted to make sure if anyone knew whether or not that kind of thing can be applied retroactive to the accident.
I have a question. I find your comments about village rides interesting. And if I wanted to look them up, Google them, I just go for Village Rides. Is the organization?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
but I we haven't used it since the pandemic started. I don't know how active it is, but yeah.
It's new.
But
A
they
new
were-
service. I hadn't heard. Okay.
Yeah.
Amy, you ask a tough question about, keeping records would be good for a lot of different reasons, not just for insurance purposes. That might be even the least of anyway, lots of good reasons, but it sounds like you don't have a setup like that. It sounds like maybe you wrote, whoever,
Right.
is there one person in charge of, like, if you were to do a report for any reason on how many rides you gave over the past year, would you be able to
Yeah.
do it?
I would not. There
Okay.
is one person who maybe could, and she does report at our board meetings, which is like every 6 weeks, that someone drove another person, and it's really nice to know that we're getting to know each other and these things just sort of spontaneously happen. So there is no formalized record keeping, but we are aware of some of the road trips that are taken. Yeah.
So that sounds like, let me take it further if I may, Amy. You might be a volunteer might be picking up a volunteer driver could be picking up someone and they don't know they haven't met them yet, or you haven't met. Are these are members who have been vetted, right? Do you meet the members?
They generally know each other through our interest groups, or through our Front Yard Fridays or whatever. Yeah. Or if they don't know each other, then I would assume, and this is my assumption, since I don't know really the details of the program, but that person who is in charge would introduce them.
Okay, where I was going with that was, when we have a process where we accept a member. We do a home visit and all of that to assess their health and their mobility. I just wanted to know if that happened, and if the volunteer, if say they don't know that the person they're picking up, do they know what that person's situation is, if there's a walker that's needed, that kind of thing?
Right. I don't know for sure, but because we're sort of a tight neighborhood, they would know that information just from our social gatherings and
I see.
things like that. But yeah. But I would have to really look at what our program for this is. I would like to go back to Village Rides.
Yeah, I was just trying to uncover where your vulnerabilities might be. That's
Yeah.
all. But
I see some vulnerabilities, definitely.
we always have to, on the topic, Mary Jo, that you brought up to say, well, we're neighbors helping neighbors, and information and communication up front, we do believe that is true. That will help prevent, we always say, so that we don't surprise the driver, the volunteer driver, this member uses a walker. We don't want anybody to show up and say, what? I didn't know you had a walker, and I got to put that in my car, and I got a bad back. We want as much communication up front.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that obviously the privacy of the member is important too, but
Exactly. And
that can prevent some things down the road. Like, I didn't know she had a chronic, I'm just making stuff up. I can't come to a quick stop because she's got some muscular thing that I'm just making stuff up. But
all right.
as much as can be said up front to try to prevent any awful, unexpected. I mean, there's only so much we can control, but anyway.
Right.
Somebody started to ask something a moment ago. No? Okay. Any other questions folks have?
Seal, it wasn't a new question, it was just a comment. I know when we were talking about events, a lot of people were looking at it from this, issue of a large scale event and financial exposure. I know that when we do small events in other facilities, we go to a church and do our Tai Chi program at a church. The church will ask for a certificate of insurance from us. And it's usually written in their little contract agreement. And we go back to Andy and ask for it, and we get it 24 hours. But we don't always, we do it when the vendor asks us for it. We don't think to do it all the time if we're just going to a place and the vendor doesn't ask for it. But it's just another business piece of paper that we're processing.
Wendy, do you usually have to pay extra for that insurance?
No, not yet. The good news is, I guess they've been small enough that it hasn't become an issue. We even, did a health fair at our local mall, and they, of course, too had, lots of requirements, but we were able to get that certificate, use it at no extra cost.
Great.
I'm actually surprised at how infrequently I've been asked that question.
And I agree
Listening
with
to
you,
all
Sue.
of you, I'm just really kind of shocked. We've gone to different venues. We've done this, we've done that, and I just can't remember.
Yeah, I think it depends on the business we're dealing with. The church was pretty, we were just doing, we were giving them $300 for a year's use of the church for Tai Chi. And, they had a little agreement we had to sign and this, that, and the other. And one of those little pieces of information was, oh, and give us a certificate of insurance. And it's
Yeah.
like, what's that? And as soon as I asked about it, I got it.
A lot of times it depends on, how attuned the venue is on their insurance risk too. If it's a small place, it may be a small church that they haven't done, that's part of their policy. But as it perhaps is to a bigger organization, the Catholic health system or something like that, you can pretty much be assured that you're going to be asked for that piece of paper. It's great to hear that not always you have to pay extra for that. So I'll make sure that I put that in the paper. That's very good information. Thank you.
Can I ask a question about cybersecurity coverage? So, and again, this is something, Andy did a presentation to our board at the last meeting, which was mostly to give new board members a comfort level on D&O insurance. And somehow it gravitated to these other things. And people said, oh, cybersecurity. And, now everybody wants cybersecurity coverage. But I guess, and I'm looking to Ken here because, I just don't have enough knowledge. I wonder how much cybersecurity coverage I need. I mean, we've got a database. The database is backed up to the cloud. It's backed up on a daily basis. We're pretty clear about our records and our Outlook files and those things being backed up to the cloud. I guess I feel that I'm at low risk of some hacker coming in and taking over my system where I'm going to have to pay them to release my data simply because I've got cloud backup. But that may be a Pollyanna point of view. And I guess if anybody on this call has some insight, I'd love to hear it.
I could speak from a foundation perspective. You know, we had a pretty big budget. We have a foundation, so we had to be very, aware of this. So we're kind of like a large village in some respect and financially. But we worked with our IT company and our insurance agent on this, and we trained our staff on cybersecurity. Mostly it was done through awareness of videos. But I think you're always at risk for this, is you have to be aware of it. A majority of the risk management is training for your staff, but also having insurance for it, because some of the biggest organizations are our CPA, who is the biggest accounting firm in Albany, got hacked, and they have a full-time IT person. So these folks are probably going to be going for the big money, but just you have to consider what if you do get hacked, how that affects your operations and how you might be able to reasonably prevent that.
Right. Well, I mean, it's interesting you raise it with the accountant, because I was talking to our accountant on Friday, because now they use QuickBooks in the cloud. And it's like, well, is that backed up? And she gave me every assurance that on a daily basis, again, they have an IT consultant whose job it is to make sure that our and all of their client records are backed up on a daily basis. They check those backups, et cetera. So it's just my own lack of knowledge about if you're hacked and your operations hacked, it still seems that you have, the backup in the cloud that's going to be your fallback. Maybe not. Anyhow, I don't want to take time with this. It's something I'm going to have to learn more about.
Well, you know what occurred to me during this discussion earlier, when I guess we were talking about know who your service providers are and what their practices are. Barbara, do you know I'm ashamed, I can't remember reading the contract that we signed with Club Express, Run My Village 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know what kind of coverage they have. I know they're good. They've been bought out by a bigger firm, but I guess, is it fair to go to your contact management vendor and say, what protection do you have against?
They all have ratings too, because I know Manuel always boasts about he's got the super duper, and Dan says he's secure. So it's a good question. And I didn't sign the contract with Run My Village. That was in place before I came on. But I'd be very curious. I think about the folks that talk about storing, and I know both systems are looking at how to store personal information. To me, that just sends red flags to me. I don't want to store people's, personal information, date of birth, things like that. And I don't think it's their business to do that.
I would like to know what kind of information people have in their member files. I'll share what we have. We do have DOB. We do have that. We do not have social security numbers. We do not have any credit card numbers. I would say the most personal information we have is date of birth.
We never did credit cards. And you know what? We had a compliance. Sorry, I've got construction.
I can't hear it.
Okay, good. We'd have to, Dave can tell you, we used to have to do this compliance thing every year, because to show that we weren't storing credit card information in any of our computer database systems, and that's a big no-no.
Right.
And even on Club Express, we don't you know, V2V doesn't store people's, you know, when you renew with membership with us, you got to give us your credit card again. We're not
Same.
storing it.
Same,
You know, we're
same
not
here.
storing the information. And I think in this day and age, when people are being hacked, you know, it goes back to the due diligence is, you know, if you have a compliance officer, whether you're a volunteer organization, or if you have an ED or the president of the board, somebody who's managing and looking at the daily, you know, bank account to make sure there's not a ding on it somewhere, you know, or that's why I always liked, and I have to be honest, I always liked IntelliCorp, you know, and I don't know what you use for background because we didn't touch it. We, you know, for the volunteers, they had to go into their own portal. They had to do their, you know, social security number. We never saw any of that information.
Well, interesting that you said that because we use IntelliCorp too, and we were surprised. I'm going to try to remember exactly what it was we uncovered. We were surprised when we went back to look at some volunteer on our account, volunteers who had gone through the background check. We saw all kinds of information still in their records.
Like social security and stuff.
You know what? I can't remember.
They're very purposeful, just giving us the report. They don't give us any of their social or their driver's license, or we have to make a copy of the driver's license, but that's required by our insurance company.
I'm trying to remember what it was, to be honest. It was about a year ago when because we don't make a point of going back to the IntelliCorp records for any reason, but for that, for some reason we did. I think to see if I think we'd forgotten to pull a record from a volunteer who had gone through the paperwork a few months before or something. I just can't remember the specifics, but we were kind of surprised when we went into the record to see what IntelliCorp kept on our,
Right.
I don't know. So,
It's
yeah.
Mary Jo, you're on speaker. I mean, on mute.
I was muted because I have a dog who loves squeaky balls. And if you heard them, you'd think there was a dying animal in the room. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. It's just an idea to float. So what I'm hearing is that a lot of people use IntelliCorp for background checks. Most villages, if they have a system, it's either Club Express or Helpful Village. Obviously, there are others. Could V2V or someone, we could create a letter to these main vendors who carry or who touch sensitive information and ask them to specifically address or restate for us what their policy is in X, Y, or Z areas. Obviously, cybersecurity is the one that comes to mind. Otherwise, I know a lot of people, you know, are going to suddenly rush off and start emailing and digging into their policies. And frankly, some of those policies are so opaque. You know, the language is there, but who knows what it means. So again, I think it would be a great public service if someone could draft a letter and say, on behalf of, you know, all V2V villages or something like that, we would like you to restate what your, in plain language, exactly what your coverage is. And maybe we'd even come up with some specific questions about that. And then we could make that information available to all the other villages.
I'd be happy to do it, you know. I'd need specifics on what you really wanted to ask, not just, you know, where's your level of cybersecurity? Do you carry insurance? You know, how do you protect, you know, villages? I would need some language in there.
Fair enough. And I think we could all, that's on us to kind of come up with those specifics. And I think we could say, at least in the case with Club Express being bought out, you know, in light of the new management that you'll be under, you know, this is a perfect time for us to see what, because things will be changing for
So
them.
Well, not in the foreseeable future.
Right.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
But maybe Seal and Wendy and those of you who know what's important, if you could submit some questions to Barbara for her to add to her letter.
Okay.
that would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I did is I went through my own insurance policy and which is 80+ pages long, to look for every place where cyber was mentioned, to kind of see if there was any kind of coverage. I haven't even looked at it in so long that, I mean, I'm still sort of in the middle of that. We're still trying to figure out what kind of addition rider to get on our own policy. But that was what I was charged with, is going through our policy and looking where it might have already been mentioned.
Mhm.
So there are 3 different places. I'm working from home right now, so I don't have it with me, but in the existing policy, where they do touch on cyber. So we might already have a tiny bit of coverage. It doesn't sound, listening to Andy, it sounds like that's not, whatever you have is not going to be enough. But I really like the idea of having someone who is sort of like the policeman for risk management. And I to really look at everything we do. For example, we had something happen where a volunteer was with someone who took a fall while, she was getting in the car. And our volunteers should all know that there needs to be a conversation about, do we call 911, and really talking through with the member. It won't cost anything for them to come and have you checked out and all that. We have a whole thing about it. And this
training.
I wanted to jump in and tell you an idea that just came up in the group that I'm in with Barbara. This was about cybersecurity specifically, but I think it could extend to other areas of insurance. And the point was that specifically with regard to cybersecurity, that we would like to have Barbara, and she volunteered to do it, to draft a letter with input from people that like you about what questions we should ask Club Express and Helpful Village, and possibly is it IntelliCorps that often does a lot of the background checks, and ask them what exactly is their cybersecurity policy with regard to personal information, because it gets buried so deep down into the 800 page insurance coverage. And so Barbara said she'd be happy to write it, but she would really welcome questions or content for that letter. So I'm just jumping in to say, if you guys would like to just offer her a few ideas as to what we should ask. And maybe there should also be one letter that goes out or this, to some of the other major, vendors. Could somebody take a look at PayPal? Could somebody look at that? Because hacking usually, I think for most villages, is going to be at the point of one of their major vendors, so you need to know what's in it. And again, it's hard to find it. So if you could help draft some good questions for her to ask her, and any other suggestions for this letter, including its destinies, that would be great.
Well, Mary Jo and Lee, one of the things that I could do, depending on how fast she wants this to happen, I could take it to the executive directors meeting. The DC Village's executive directors meet monthly, and I could take that to them and collect from them any thoughts or questions they have.
When is the next meeting?
Let's hold on one second. If you could see my desk, you'd know what a labor it is to find next month's calendar. It's on the 3rd of August.
Okay, well, I can email her. I'm sure there's no hurry, on this, and she just very kindly, it wasn't her suggestion, it was mine, but I suggested her for herself, and she said she'd be glad to do it. So I think that if you could get her that information, and I will let her know that August 3rd is a time when she could definitely get some additional information.
All right, and Lee, you might have some ideas yourself. I'm just jumping in there for the DC villages.
No, I think it's a great idea. I'm glad she's going to be doing that. I think it'll be very helpful.
Yeah.
And Mary,
individual village trying to reach out and not know what questions to ask.
Right.
So Mary Jo, I have to say that it's clear you've honed the art of volunteering other people, which is one of the best tools a nonprofit manager can have.
What can I volunteer you for today, Denise?
I was talking about other people, not me.
Well, you
I just-
volunteered to sit on our governance committee, so that's good. Lee, you might be interested to know that we finally have a governance committee.
Oh, I'm so happy. Yay.
Yes, and Denise is on it. I'm right, didn't you? You, I think, did volunteer, Denise?
I did indeed. And
Good.
let me just point out, Mary Jo, I did just volunteer to take this question to the DC
There you
villages.
go.
That's what I was
So-
thinking. You did volunteer.
Exactly. So you already got me once today too.
There we go. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we just thought, as you know, Leah, especially things like our identifying, recruiting, and electing board officers was totally ad hoc.
I know.
Personal, totally personal. Somebody, you made a call or somebody made a call and said, wouldn't you like to serve?
Right.
And so I don't know if you've ever met or have known Leila Riazi, who spoke, I think, once on the program today. She asked one of the questions. She's from Chevrolet. She's absolutely a wonderful person. Just a wonderful person. She was one of the founders and is currently the president of Chevrolet. And she was the mayor of Chevrolet for a little while.
Yeah, I did. I don't think I ever met her.
No, it was Diane Lavoie who suggested her because she was Diane's vice, co-chair for.
I remember Diane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Board succession, that's a big topic.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you two. You were
Oh,
just.
that's okay. We were just talking about our session and making sure we had our notes on it.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, and are you turning them into SEAL or something, or what was that?
Yeah, that's what we'll do. And then I think SEAL's going to probably compile everything, including the recording and some of these reports from Andy and Ken, and maybe we'll package it all together to put on the Wave site.
Right. Well, I can tell you that, do stay tuned for this new Wave site.
Yay.
But some things will not go live right away because it's Club Express.
Right.
And Club Express is membership driven, and its back end wasn't really configured right for Wave. As an organization of organizations, we still have to do some work. But the general content, communications portion will be up there. I'm going to have to go get a little drink of water so that I don't. So carry on.
So Denise, I think that was kind of like the last portion, the Club Express Helpful
Yeah.
Village discussion.
Thank you for raising that because I had no notes on it. So
That was the only other thing I think I took a note on.
yeah. Great. Well, I think I've got it then. I will try to get these written up in the next couple of days. And if SEAL's who I should send them to, I'll take care of that.
Okay, yeah, I would send everything to Seal and then we can review all that and figure out how she wants to package everything.
Yeah, and please, Lee, if, when you look at what I've written, if I misremember something or in.
Is this room still? Or Linda, is this group over? Is the group over?
We just finished.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Jonas. Appreciate all your help. Well, there we are again. Lee, again, so nice to have you today.
Thank you for inviting me and including me. It was great to be part of this again. I miss you all.
Yeah, well, we miss you, but Ohio was home and it's home again, so you must
Right.
be very happy.
Right, we're happy to be back and reconnecting with everyone again. It's been
Good.
great.
Good for you. Well, thank you so much. I guess I'm going to sign off too then.
Okay, me too. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
The bank is now requiring me to provide my personal tax information for 3 years to get a corporate credit card. And on principle, I'm opposed to that. Simply because what happens when I leave tomorrow? Why is it my personal credit rating that becomes the basis for the organization's credit card?
Wow.
So because of my pissiness about this, I've stuck with using the debit card for these kinds of transactions, but the debit card does come with some risk. And I raise that only because of your comment about Venmo and all these other services.
Yeah, we stopped using a debit card and started using a credit card because
Right.
of what you just brought up, but I didn't have that issue about my personal. Yeah, that's, that is interesting.
Like I said, it just makes me pissy.
Yeah, I know. By the way, Ken, I don't even know if I hope these conversations are helpful to you. And I was going to say some of the, I don't know what's going on in the other breakouts, but they're all being recorded. It might be worth checking out the conversations in there to see if any questions were raised that might instruct you. I don't know if any answers were given, but
I'd appreciate that. I'm taking notes like crazy here because it's some really good information. It's going to definitely find its way into our paper. I appreciate it.
We are right on 12 noon. Anybody else have any outstanding questions before we adjourn? I think we haven't had a dull moment really since this thing started. It's a big topic.
Great. Good job.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your participation in this. Look
you.
for our recordings and a handout from Andy Cooley to follow in the next week or so.
Right.
Ken, thank you for being with us. Really appreciate you staying for Breakout.
And I would love to, after we do finalize this paper, I could send it to you to distribute to the WAVE participants. Is that
great.
the best way to do it?
Generous. That's wonderful.
Thank you very much, Ken. We appreciate it. And thank you, Seal, for all the effort that you put into. You always pull these things together so that everything is tied up and has a lot of depth. So thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. All right. Everybody have a great week.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
People are wrapping up.
Hello.
I think that went
All the other two rooms
swimmingly.
are closed. They wrapped up a few minutes
Okay,
ago.
great. I just want to thank you, Jonas, for all your help in
Happy
making
to help.
the breakouts go so smoothly and answering questions in the chat room before I could even get my fingers going. That was really, you're great. Really appreciate it.
Well, happy to help.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your summer.
Okay, yes,
We
yes.
won't
Thank
bother
you.
you for a
Thank
while.
You too.
Yeah, we won't be bugging you. But remember, Jonas, speaking of all these, formal payment things that we've done on the program today, if you don't submit an invoice, we can't pay you.
Oh, we
I will
thank
do
him.
that
Thank
some
him
point
hard,
this
he better.
week.
There you
Yes,
go.
definitely.
There you go. Okay.
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 See you
Bye-bye.
guys
No
later.
delays there, I promise.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.
Bye.